In this video, I give you a walkthrough of the remix decks in Traktor Pro 2. Find out more coming up. Thank you for watching PDot TV, where you find tips, tricks, and tutorials for DJs and music performers. Now let's get into the video.
Okay, so we've already talked about track decks. Now let's talk about remix decks in Traktor Pro 2. So a remix deck is very similar to the Ableton Live style of launching clips. In Traktor Pro 2, we now have the remix deck, which is very similar. Like clip launching in Ableton Live, you get this grid right here. We get 4 different columns with 4 pads each, or 4 rows each, and then you actually get 4 of those as well. So 16 and then 4 16s. So you get a lot of flexibility as far as the amount of samples or loops or full songs that you can load. You can load any piece of audio into these slots. Right here, I have 4 different loops. I basically just made a beat, broke it down into 4 sections. As you can see, I have my drums here, pads here, first lead here, and second lead here. What's cool about the remix deck is it analyzes the audio just like a normal track in Traktor Pro 2, and then it'll time stretch and sync up to whatever you're playing. So once it gets analyzed within Traktor Pro, you have the ability to time stretch, pitch it up, pitch it down, work with the audio like it was in a regular track deck. But it's kind of like having 4 different track decks all in one deck and all synced to whatever you're playing. So let's go ahead and get these started, and then I'll show you how you can bring these in. So I'll go ahead and start the drums first. Then I'll bring in the pad. Now bring in the leads. Notice it's synced, and this is the quantized value right here, so you can pick how you want these to launch. Just like in Ableton Live, you can have it kind of quantized, so it'll trigger on each beat, half note, quarter note, all the way up to 32 beats, or 8 bars. So you can get your loops real locked in and have them launch right on time, which is awesome. Just like a regular track deck, this is the pitch value right here, or this is the BPM value, but it can be tweaked with like the pitch. So since this is the master deck right here, I can change it. So if you hear it, I can make it go any pitch range, and it'll still sound good because it's still, each clip has the ability to be have master tempo on, so you have the ability to stretch them without them sounding out of whack as well. So let's go down to each slot. So here, like I mentioned earlier, you have your master tempo or key lock. You have the ability to assign your effects to each slot, not just for the entire deck, but each slot you can turn the effects on or off. You can cue them as well, and then you also have a mute button here, and then you have your 4 slots that you can play from. Also, what's cool is that each deck has its own volume, which is awesome, and right here, you have a filter as well, which is cool because with hardware like any of Native Instruments controllers, like the F1 or the the ones with the screens on it, with the touch strip, D2 I believe it's called, or the newer like the S5, you get a lot of control for each slot, not just the whole deck, but you can tweak each slot, change the volumes, change the filters, add effects, key lock some of them, don't key lock, and certain slots as well. So let's just stop this real quick. So on top of that, each slot, you get different play modes. So you can have it play through, you can have it synced or not synced, you can have it loop or just one shot. There's a lot of control within the remix deck and a lot of possibilities as well. So right now it's playing internally, but you can also change it to scratch control right here, and then it'll play through using timecode. So imagine having 4 different scratch samples and then turning each one on and off using a controller while scratching at the same time. So you can have up to 4 different sounds queued up and playing at the same time, or going, if you have a routine, you're going through one sample, then playing another one. A lot of possibilities that aren't really available or aren't possible on the other DJ softwares. This is where Traktor Pro shines, where they have different type of technologies that you don't see in the other softwares, and remix decks are definitely one of them, where not only do you get the clip launching style, but you get scratch control as well through timecode, which is crazy to me. I mean, we've seen people utilize this like Shifty, but I don't think enough people know enough about remix decks and how to set them up yet. It's just not one of the things in Traktor Pro or in DJ software in general that really get explored. But this has a lot of potential if you have different loops set up. And not only loops, you can also, like I mentioned earlier, you can have one shot, so you can have your different scratch samples. Or what you do see a lot of is, instead of scratch samples or loops, each one of these be different drum sounds, so you can kind of drum out on pads. Like I currently have the Z2 mixer hooked up, so each side has 4 pads, so I can have a kick drum, a snare, a hi-hat, a different like drop sound or something like that, and I can drum out while I'm using the other decks as well. So even though I have 2 decks playing, I can switch over to deck C or D and have my own samples drumming them out, just like I would with, say, something like the SP6 and Serato. So say you're just using the 2 decks and you're not going to use deck C and D, you can use deck C and D as sort of like an SP6 replacement. But in a lot of ways, it's better than SP6 because you get so many more samples and the ability to mess with them with the effects and with the filters and the different play modes. It's just a lot more flexible than the SP6, or I should say the Serato sampler, with the abilities and the kind of editing that you can do with each remix deck slot. So that's what you see a lot of usually, is using it just like a sampler, launch your drops or launch your drum sounds, or drum along, or come up with a routine. But the possibility of adding different loops, or what's also cool is that if you drop different songs into these decks, you can have whole songs playing at once. So say if you're playing a style like minimal techno, where you can have multiple songs layered up and have it sound right, so much more deck control. And you can actually, out of 2 decks in Serato, or I'm sorry, out of 2 decks in Traktor Pro 2, you actually get 8 different tracks playing at the same time, if you're that crazy and if you have enough tracks like that that can layer up. So if you are a Traktor Pro user and you haven't really explored remix decks yet, I would say you can just get a couple one-shot samples like drums or effects, or get a bunch of drum loops, chop them out of your whatever songs, throw them in with different synth loops and bass loops, and play around with it. It's a really powerful tool that I really wish more people would use. Been a part of Traktor Pro 2 for a long time and definitely deserves your attention.
So that's a walk through the remix decks in Traktor Pro 2. So question of the day, how are you going to use the remix decks in your sets? Go ahead and leave that down in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say. And as always, if you found this video useful, please go ahead and give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, go ahead and hit the subscribe button right there. Or if you'd like to see more content, go ahead and click on that video right there. And thank you for watching PDot TV, where you find tips, tricks, and tutorials for DJs and music performers. See you next time.